I think for doctors, our biggest wealth generating tool is our income because, we spend a lot of time, energy, and money getting it. And the more you take your time away from it, whether you got to deal with tenants or properties or whatever, unless you're in a group or something to where you don't have to be there. But me being a solo practitioner, if I take time away from here, then my income goes down. So that's why I like the passive route, because I can stay focused. The income stays the same. Focus on getting better, because the more money you make, you go to these different different CME courses and all these different courses to better yourself. You provide more value. You're able to charge more, and the more you make, the more you can invest passively.
My guest on this week's podcast is Jeff Anzalone, a practicing periodontist and educating other clinicians on his blog, Debt Free Doctor, sharing what he has learned to help others. Please join me to listen in why he started investing, lessons learned through owning his own property, and passive investing in commercial real estate. Okay, Jeff, welcome to the Providers, Properties, and Performance podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Well, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your background and how you came from a practicing physician and then into the journey of a physician investor?
Yeah, actually, it all started about 2 weeks before I finished my training at LSU. And I was supposed to come back with a group practice here in Louisiana, but the deal fell through. So we had $300,000 in student loan debt, a 2-month-old, and unfortunately, we'd already bought a home interest only because the banker knew the group I was going to go in with. So he's like, "Oh yeah, you're good for it." So it's like, they don't teach you how to do anything as far as running a practice in school. So that was the worst part. So that really put me behind the 8 ball of not knowing what to do. But luckily, another guy kind of heard what happened. He took me under his wing. Um, he let me rent, but kind of the worst part was, during those first couple of years, I had to do whatever I could to make ends meet. So I had to go back to what I used to do in high school and mow yards. So I was probably the most highly trained yard guy, in the country. So, but you got to do what you got to do, for your family.
Yeah.
But back then, the only financial advice I had gotten before was Dave Ramsey. So I followed his 7 baby steps. And then after about 7.5 years, we had gotten out of debt, paid off the house. And then it was kind of like, all right, now what? But it took a snow skiing accident to really get me going towards real estate. And in front of me, and I swerved when I fell, I put my hands down, my wrist bent backwards. And that was the first time I thought to myself, if I can't work and use my hands, how am I going to provide for my family? So that was a point that I really knew that I was operating very in a risky way, but I didn't know what to do. But I started researching, and there's all kinds of, as there's all kinds of information out there. But 2 main facts stood out to me, which really helped me stay focused on what I should do. Number one, over 90% of millionaires had real estate in their portfolio. At that time, I had 0. And number two, the majority of millionaires have anywhere from 3 to 7 streams of income. They only had 1. So that showed me that I needed to focus on getting multiple streams of income from real estate.
Well, I'm excited to interview you because, I want to direct any physician investors out there to your website, following this interview, because I think it has a ton of information, and you've done a lot of work and made it relative to them. And I could, we can make this interview a lot longer, but we both have other things to do. So, I want to focus on your blog, on your website, with regard to medical office real estate and why doctors sell their buildings.
Mhm.
But I do want to point out that there's a ton of other valuable information on there. So, in this blog, you talk about the 10 reasons to sell your medical office building, and you actually did that with my friend Ben Reinberg. And you outline, why a practitioner may want to sell their real estate, to include, and I'm completely summarizing here, the property management, ownership responsibilities, debt service, partnerships, conflict of interest between maximizing your practice operation with equipment versus building maintenance, and ready to offload an asset and plan for retirement. Um, would you say that all of these issues surround a go-forward plan where a physician needs to purchase real estate for their operation with the exit strategy in mind before they purchase it?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that's real important, for sure. Sometimes sometimes they may not own the building. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't really think about that they could sell it ahead of time.
Mhm.
So there's always things to think about. That's just another potential income stream, that you could get while you're still practicing.
Well, all of the points you mentioned are very valid. When a clinician wants to purchase, own, and operate the real estate that they occupy with their practice, and I want to kind of drill down on a few of these. So, um, I see a lot of physician and investors, and they look at property. They're either looking for opportunistic properties where they want to buy very value add and fix it up, lease it to themselves, and or a couple other medical tenants and hold it. They're looking, at it from a own versus lease analysis because of their build out costs for tenant improvements, where they want to get the economic benefit of their own tenancy. And then they need to expand into a new market, and there is an existing inventory, so they have to pretty much build their own building. And then some just want to, some hear that they must own their property because you always want to own versus rent, to build equity. Um, I think I try to do the approach where, it's not an all or nothing approach. But I do try to, have them go into it on a more offensive than a defensive strategy. Um, where, and even some of the most savvy ones take it the next step and, proactively use their real estate as a incredible financial tool. And they buy, and then they sell, and then they use tax deferred exchanges, joint ventures, and they rinse and repeat. But talk about, so, with that thought in mind, exit strategies. So growth and expansion, economic benefit and profit, retirement and sale of the practice. Um, so when you have purchased real estate, what are some of the reasons that you have done it? And have you thought about what you're going to plan to do and have, a hold period, or thought about your exit strategy before you bought it?
Yeah, most of the majority of the real estate that I'm currently in is in the passive real estate, like syndications,
Mhm.
and typically uh those have a hold period, and they have a whole sector of those in medical office buildings that typically, if you were to invest in that, it would typically would have, like, you would know the whole period before you got in, whether it's 5-year hold period or 10-year hold period, something like that, so that you would know how much a minimum amount to invest. You would know kind of what your return would be over that. Let's say it's 10-year hold period, what to expect over that 10-year hold period, what the depreciation would look like, with what they were going to be using, how it could offset the passive income. And then when they plan on selling it, what they were projecting the sell would be, so you would kind of know what your initial investment is, like, would be like, would if you put in $100,000 or $200,000, would that double, would that triple, whatever, so that you would know. Typically you would know a lot of these things before you did that with these different types of syndications.
Well, and that brings up a good point because, that's a passive, and then there's the active, where if you own it, you have to manage the property management, and there's a lot of ownership responsibilities. So are the syndications attractive to you because you didn't want to basically be, managing it as an owner actively?
Yeah, what now I own my own building right now, and probably people listening to this, they may own their own building or in a partnership where they own their own building. So that's one way that you could potentially use, so you could sell actually, as you could sell your building before you retire and start getting a return on it. I do know some people that will sell their practice to another doctor or a group of doctors, but they'll keep the building themselves. And then, they can have the new tenants rent. A lot of times you need to make sure you put it in the contract that as soon as they buy your practice, they're not going to move, so that,
Right.
you're at least you're going to have a tenant.
Right, exactly. Well,
But, but
oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
for me, with, I think for doctors, our biggest wealth generating tool is our income because we spend a lot of time, energy, and money getting it. And the more you take your time away from it, whether you got to deal with tenants or properties or whatever, unless you're in a group or something to where you don't have to be there. But me being a solo practitioner, if I take time away from here, then that my income goes down. So that's why I like the passive route, because I can stay focused, the income stays the same, focus on getting better, because the more money you make, you go to these different CME courses and all these different courses to better yourself. You provide more value, are able to charge more, and the more you make, the more you can invest passively. Now, I do know that some people start off on this route, and then as they get older, they transition into more active,
Mhm.
but just because they want to be more involved, and that's fine. But I think I'm seeing more and more doctors now that are busy and they're trying to replace their active income with this passive income.
Is going to active, buy a property and be an active investor is, I if their plan is to continue to practice medicine, I strongly encourage them to, hire these professionals that can,
Mhm.
meet with vendors during the day, and manage a lot of they had a lot of breaks on fees and whatnot, but I do think that it's a good option. Um, and then, so your syndication is a good example of, partnerships, LLCs, and where there's, the sponsor is the general partner, and then, you guys are all limited partners. Um, have you, so, um, have you, have you done any medical office, syndications and partnerships in medical office?
I'm currently vetting two groups right now that we're looking at doing. And I do know that these like these ASC centers, these surgical centers are really, really becoming more popular, as right now. So that's another asset class that I'm definitely looking into as well.
And what do you think about, these sale leasebacks? That's where, you mentioned how doctors can get out of the real estate, before they're done retiring. And that's really, attractive in the market right now. And I see a lot of them. And what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, from the people that I've spoken with that have done it, they've been very pleased and happy. As long, it's kind of like whenever you're investing in a syndication, it's always finding that group that you can trust and really doing. And I know with Ben's group, you had mentioned they of that, and that's all they do. They're just focused on that. So I think it's really important to find the group that you can trust and make sure you talk with people that have done the work with them. That's how you can perform your due diligence. Make sure that what they were promising up front, that they delivered as far as returns and service and that sort of things. I think that's really important as well.
Absolutely. So we're going to go into, the part of the interview where we get to know you a little bit for the listeners. But before I do that, do you have anything else to add, like any success stories or lessons learned that you want to share with some other physicians that might be looking to move into real estate investing?
I would I always tell people from all, and probably you can attest to this too, 99% of the time, the real estate investors that I've met, they always said, well, I always got started with the mindset shift, you know, and it really takes you thinking differently about money and how you're making money. And two of the books that did that for me was Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. But even more than that was his follow-up book, The Cash Flow Quadrant.
Mm.
And man, once I read that, it was just like, I'm so stupid, I'm just, all I'm doing, as a self-employed doctor, all I am is just a glorified employee, because if I'm not there treating patients, I'm not getting paid.
Mhm.
But that's what we're taught. We're taught to, if you want to make more money, you see more patients, you work longer hours, you work more shifts, right? And that's just our mentality. And then we go to Christmas parties at the end of the year, and the way that we boast about ourselves is we talk about how much taxes we paid each year. It's just like, it's like we're stupid. And I used to be in the same boat, and now it's just like, I want to tell people I pay zero in taxes and I
Right.
don't hardly see any patients. And they're like, well, how do you do that? It's like real estate. So again, the cash flow quadrant, it's all about not how much you make, but it's how you make money. And
Mhm.
until you can start thinking that way, you're never going to change. You're just going to keep giving your money to a financial advisor and a 401k, and you're going to have to work until you're 65 or 70. And if you want access to your money, you have to pay a fee and taxed on it.
Right.
No thanks.
So what has been the most fun real estate investment you've done so far?
I would say it was an apartment complex in North Carolina, and I had an old IRA that I wasn't doing anything with, just traditional IRA. So I opened up a self-directed IRA, moved some money out of the traditional IRA into it, and then I was able to, with the self-directed IRA, you can invest in whatever you want. So I invested in this apartment building, and it was projected to hold for 5 years, double our money over 5 years. Got an email 22 months later. The group said they got an offer they couldn't refuse. So we got our returns in less than 2 years instead of 5. So that was pretty nice, seeing those returns. Good luck getting that in the stock market, right?
That is a great story.
Yeah.
So you've told us a little bit about your lawn mowing, but was that your first job when you were younger?
Yeah, I started when I was 12. My dad would help me, he had a pickup truck, and we would get the push mower. He'd put it in the back of his truck, and he would have let me do the mowing, but he would do the weed eating, rocks or something to shoot up a quote dangerous part. But yeah, that was my first job, and I learned that I really liked not working for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I was in all that performance pay too. So, when you're young, you can either work, fast food or in retail for minimum wage, or you can do like, what you're doing and say, okay, on Saturday, I'm going to mow X amount of lawns and, a couple during the week. And, you have control of your schedule. And also, in that sense, when you're young and don't know about investing yet, the more you work, the more you can get.
Exactly.
So what else can you see yourself doing for a living?
I'm 47 right now, and my goal is to transition out of practice in 5 years or less. I really like real estate and educating. Probably will start being a little more active, maybe doing some co-general partnerships with some of these groups, and really, I really connect with the doctor community, because I know their pain points because I've dealt with them too, and just continue to grow that side of it.
What or who are you reading or listening to for news, information, or inspiration?
I'd read my Bible every morning. I think that's what keeps me guided, and in life. You can learn a lot in Proverbs, whether you're a believer or not, from life lessons, especially financial lessons in there. A lot about investing and that sort of thing. There's several podcasts and I've kind of gotten more away from podcasts and I'm more YouTube now, just because I like to be able to see, you make that connection when you see people, like this. You can there's just something about it besides reading an article or listening, and that's why I started a YouTube channel last year, just because I was doing more of it. And it seems like as soon as you sign up or something, whether it's a medical office, investing or whatever, they'll interview somebody. And then if I like them and they have a resource or a site, then I'll go and subscribe to them. And then it's just kind of like you kind of go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, so that's kind of how I find my information, like that.
I like that. What is one thing you do every day for healthy self-care?
I work out 5 to 6 days a week or play tennis with my kids. So always stay active as much as possible.
Absolutely. So, so I have two final questions, and I'm going to do both of them on you because you're an investor, and then you are a practicing periodontist as well. But are leaders born or trained, in your opinion?
I think they're trained.
I like that.
For sure.
Do you think clinicians are born with the desire to help patients, or they learn kind of the healing side and bedside manner through medical education and training?
I think they learn from examples, and that's kind of how I got involved. I had when I was 7 years old, I was in had a bad burn, and I had to go through skin grafting and 2 to 3 weeks in a hospital, and I actually had to learn how to walk again. And I still remember that plastic surgeon to this day. And that's what really inspired me, seeing how much time he took and patience and all that. So I learned and modeled from him, which has kind of helped me as I've grown to, my practice and started treating patients.
That's kind of like the answer to your first question, that people are trained.
Yep.
Well, Jeff, this has been a wonderful interview. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here and love all the stuff you're doing. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.